Good morning, Neil. Sean here. We're outside number 10 Downing Street. As I've often said here on the show, probably one of the most famous doors in the world. Everybody who's anybody has simply gone through that door. It's a step of history, isn't it? Doesn't matter who you are, what you are. Many people are very impressed if they get invited to a private function at 10 Downing Street. But of course, it's the people behind the door that really fascinates so many people, not just political watchers, people like that, but of course the general public. There have been so many famous names to go through that door. And the one thing that you do find out about covering the political beat, as it's called, is simply this. You do arrive normally on a crest of a wave. Everybody's cheering you, everybody wants to see you do well. And then now, as we've seen in this digital age, you go through that door and all of those staff are waiting and wondering whether you, the brand new British Prime Minister, are going to keep them on or not, as the case may be. And then, of course, at the end of your tenure of being the Prime Minister, you have the downside. Normally, you're very lucky if you don't leave in disgrace. We've seen that so many times. And it's fascinating to many people because over here in the United Kingdom, we had a very excellent series called House of Cards, which starred the brilliant actor Ian Richardson, all about a fictitious Prime Minister, but what went on behind the scenes in order to secure that role. Over in America, it was remade as House of Cards, but this time around with Kevin Spacey in a slightly different role, and some say not as hard-hitting as the British version. But one man recently over here in the United Kingdom that really caused a splash with an 80-seat majority was none other than this man, the Right Honourable Boris Johnson. That is, of course, until he was unseated from power with a coup, many people might say, of his own party. It all turns out to be backstabbing, and everybody who you thought was a friend is never a friend because it's all about political gain. Something that Mr. Johnson knows only too well. But then, of course, he decided to, disappear, move away from the limelight for a while. And many people have now given him a lot of abuse online simply because he's having to make a living outside being the British Prime Minister, even though they are the ones that decided to kick him out, as simple as that. Now, what's interesting also is, as we told you recently on the show, he's managed to pick up a substantial amount for his forthcoming memoirs. But the most anticipated event so far is a forthcoming interview on Talk TV. That's a channel over here in the United Kingdom, and you can get it screened, I believe, around the world via Sky News Australia, Fox Nation in the US. Fascinating stuff, as I'm sure you'll agree. He's agreed, Mr. Johnson, to sit down with his former Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, who's been given her own show on the channel, Friday Nights with Nadine. Now, you could say that this is a bit of a coup booking, and it truly is, because Mr. Johnson doesn't give that many interviews. He was very astute, you see, whatever you think. He's a very educated man. Now, the bottom line is this, he decided not to meet with the media because he simply knew that the media do nothing but attack you. But by going through digital media, YouTube, Instagram, all of that sort of stuff, and speaking directly to the British public, he could get his message across without interruptions. Who could forget over here the last time he sat down with a mainstream media journalist, Susanna Reid? Do you remember? She sat opposite him and basically said that there was this particular individual, Elsie, who was so cold, lacking in money, that she had to sit on buses all day in order to keep warm. Turns out that Elsie remained invisible and wasn't as poor as Susanna and Good Morning Britain made out. So while people are wanting to deride Nadine Dorries, who's also a very successful, best-selling author, it will be interesting at least for her to sit down with her former boss and find out exactly just what he thinks to the state of the country since he left it, and of course his plans for the future. Many people are suspecting that Boris himself may once again put him back up to be leader of the party, and of course in the fullness of time once again become the British Prime Minister. It's set to be sizzling stuff. Now, whether you're a fan of Boris or Nadine or not, a lot of political commentators will be simply tuning in to pick it apart, but more importantly, fill their columns, hopefully this time with some truths. Neil Sean, 10 Downing Street, London.